Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge, bringing you a deck profile, a second one from the Toronto Bay Challenge. This is going to be my top 8 deck profile with Raging Spirits. So of course Flag is Ancient World because we're talking about Raging Spirits here. Of course it's going to be Ancient World. And then our buddy is a foil Dragon Kid Ricky because Quilly best artist, and because Ricky is the best buddy for this deck, because any size 3 is a terrible buddy, because you never know, depending on the matchup, you're going to be calling different size 3s. But Ricky is that one card that you're going to call in pretty much every matchup, so it is the best buddy in the deck. Next up is for Champion Lord, Bash Dragon Emperor Champion Lord. It's a 9/2/6, lifelink 2, double attack, redirects everything to himself, and it costs 2 gauge. I have 2 of these foil, hoping to get more soon. I won't foil out this deck as much as I can, because there isn't that much stuff I can foil out, not even any SPs, so I want to do that. But anyways, I see people not giving this card anywhere near enough credit. You should be maxing this no matter what. It is so good. Like, it puts in so much work. It is ridiculous. It is what gives you your pressure, your field clearing, all that stuff when you need it. And there are matchups where you're really going to need that, where you're going to need to push hard and push fast. And Champion Lord gives you that when you need that. Next is Soul Path Dragon Emperor Oni Street. This guy is so good. Run this guy at 4. He is a free redirector and lifelink 2, but he has no call cost. He has 3 crit with 7,000 power and 7,000 defense. 7,000 defense is so good. That means you can't be pillar fired, and that means you give stuff like Skull Warriors a really difficult time. You also make it much more difficult for decks like Purgatory Knights and Armor Dragons to deal with you, because Purgatory Knights have a bunch of 6k attackers, and Armor Dragon decks have a lot of 6k power weapons. So Oni Street, 7k defense, forces them to not be able to just use those to standalone attack you, and gives them a lot more trouble with you. Next is Wicked Dragon Emperor Billion Knuckle. This card is so good. Okay, it's like a bigger Demon Girdle Arc. Pay 2 gauge, put the top card of your deck into its soul, redirect effect, Soul Guard, counterattack, and lifelink 2. This is my favorite one when it comes to the size 1 matchups. And besides Oni Street, this is the guy you go for against Dungeon World. Especially if you're facing dungeon enemies, this is your savior against dungeon enemies, because it's the only one with Soul Guard, so it's the only one that can't be insta-killed by Burning Meteor. He is so important for the deck, because he just puts in so much work. Okay. How do I put this? One of my favorite plays to do against size 1 rush decks, any decks that has a lot of low power, low defense stuff, is my opponent declares an attack. If they don't have like a Dragon Energy or anything, that sort of clone, I can cast Dragon Thunder on their one thing that's attacking, so that their other thing doesn't have enough power anymore. It rams into this, counterattack goes off, and they get hit. That's a really good play, but you have to be careful when you're going to go for that, because, well, if they have a Dragon Energy clone, if they have anything like that, anything that can protect them from the thunder, then you could just lose a soul for no reason. So you have to be careful with that play, but it's really good against Dungeon World, because Dungeon World doesn't really have a way to stop you from doing that. It's really good against 72 Pillars, because their only way to protect their monster is with their Magical Goodbye, but they're still going to lose a monster in the process and invalidate their own attack. So it's just really powerful. And last we have the one of Ethereal Overlord Gang the King. Gang isn't very good, I'm going to be frank. He's a 5 crit penetrate, and that's useful at times, but it's not going to be useful all the time. As soon as we get Everlock, it's coming out. This guy's coming out for that guy, because Everlock is so much better, and Gang the King just doesn't do that much. There are a lot of ways to get around penetrate these days, so Gang the King just isn't that useful. But he's another Raging Spirit, and that one of can come in handy in certain matchups, so I keep him around. Moving on to size 2s, we have 2 copies of Storm Dragon Emperor Thunder Tornado. For 1 gauge, this lets you blow up an item or spell, and it can't be spell negated because it's a monster ability, which is really, really powerful, especially against stuff like stars, because it's not nullified by Great Fate, and you can just blow up Great Fate without having to worry about their Rethen Guards. It's a really powerful card, helps you out against a lot of threatening set spells or items that are giving you some trouble. So it's really fantastic. Like, you would be lost against like Bechstein or Hades Fall without this card, but this card allows you to deal with those things. Next is 3 copies of Wicked Dragon of Fabrication Demonica. For 2 gauge and 1 life, if you have a size 3 on the field, you can discard this to negate their spell, which is really good. It lets you secure victories, it lets you stop things like oops and things that could give you a lot of trouble, things that are threatening to wipe out your Raging Spirit. Just a really powerful card that can help you out with a lot of situations. Next is 3 Ice Dragon Emperor Glacies. For 1 life, if you have a size 3, you can nullify an attack. That's a bit more expensive than the standard attack negate, which is why it's only at 3. But that still allows you to bypass any threat of spell negate, which is really good if you're worried about that against like Magic World or Katana World or any of the bunch of decks that have access to a spell negate. And of course, we have 4 copies of the buddy, Dragon Kid Ricky. This card is amazing. I have a second one that's foil actually. I want to get all of these foiled out, as I said earlier. This card is so good. 3/1/3, lifelink 1, and nullifies the lifelink of your Raging Spirit size 3s. Keep in mind that if you get, say, Day of the Dragon and both your size 3 and Ricky get killed at the same time, you will only take Ricky's lifelink because Ricky's effect is still in effect until they've both completely left the field because they're being destroyed at the same time. Ricky is really good. It gives you that extra attack. It prevents your lifelink from affecting you. That's really good. It's not so great in certain matchups. Like, against Magic World, I kind of have to say that you might want to avoid calling Ricky, especially if your life is low, because they'll just keep on bouncing Ricky, since it's our only possible target for Magic Goodbye, really. It's going to be really useful for them to bounce. So they'll just keep bouncing Ricky, and you'll keep taking that lifelink 1, and that's not very good for you when Magic World is already a tricky matchup, especially Wizards, because they have all these bouncing and sending to gauge and crap to get rid of your Raging Spirits, and without you having any chance to Wrath Trigger. And then I have Burning Right Brooder because Damien is an idiot. I love you, Damien. Okay, so I put this in because I didn't have my Gadastols, and I was like, crap, what else do I put in? So I just put in a random size 0. It helped me a couple times, but honestly, I think I should have had this as a Glacies instead, as a 4th Glacies to protect me. Maybe the Raging Spirit Draco Energy instead. One of those will have done just fine. Next is 4 Divine Dragon Creation. You need 4 of this because it is an absolutely amazing card. It's pay 2 life for a nice one. That's amazing. Because life is a resource until you run out of it. But when you are against stuff like Greybard or Magic World, because those are the 2 difficult decks for Raging Spirits to deal with, you are more often than not going to want to avoid using Divine Dragon Creation, because it'll knock you down 2 more life, which makes it easier for them to kill you. And you don't want to make it even easier for them to kill you when they're burn damage and they're bouncing in the case of Magic World and sending to gauge in the case of Magic World. It's going to make that a lot easier for them. Next we have 4 copies of Dragon Emperor Legend, of course, because this card is amazing. 1 gauge, 1 life, and draw 1 card for free, once per turn. This card is so good. It is arguably the best resource card in the game. It just does so much. It is all the gauge excel you will ever need. The extra life is a godsend against stuff like Greybar and Magic World, as I mentioned. But yeah, it's really, really good. Next is 4 Wrath Trigger. You absolutely need this. The deck is dead if you are not running this, because this lets you deal with destruction and all that crap. And for 1 gauge and 1 life, you keep your monster around, and it gets counterattack for the entire turn. The entire turn, which allows you to do those thunder plays that I mentioned with Billy Knuckle with any Raging Spirit if you've played Wrath Trigger that turn. And it just lets you keep your stuff around. It's just so, so good. So fantastic. You need this card. Then we have 4 copies of Dragon Prudent. I almost have these all foiled. I have a fourth foil one coming soon, so I will soon have this this lineup completely foiled out, but not yet. But for now, I have 3, but it's a Battle Roar Circle clone. It's so good. It lets you nullify attacks even if you don't have a Raging Spirit, which is so important. It is a fantastic card. It lets your Raging Spirit stay along for longer. I kind of wish counterattack worked the way Grendel's effect does, so that I could punish people for attacking with Prudent, but unfortunately I cannot. So yeah. Next is Dragon Thunder. Very good card. This card is just fantastic. People do not run this enough in Ancient World. It is so good. It just lets you blow up a monster with 2,000 or less power or defense for free. Counter speed. People play Dragonic Shoot a lot in Dragon World decks these days because it's free and it hits so many threats. The same thing goes for Thunder, but it hits a lot more threats because it also accounts for defense. And there are a lot of things that have 2,000 or less defense. Like, if you're going up against Dungeon World or Stars or Crimson, this hits pretty much everything in the deck. Death Rulers hits pretty much all. It hits all of the Shadow Divers, so that's really good. Against Black Dragons, it hits everything. Against Purgatory Knights, it hits a lot of things. It hits a lot of size 1s in like every deck. Like, so many worlds have a size 1 that this card hits. Any 3 crit in the game is going to get hit by this. 3 crit size 1, that is. There are just so many things that this hits. If you're worried about Champion Wrestler, my favorite thing is when my opponent drops a Champion Wrestler Asmodai, and then I just use Dragon Thunder to prevent myself from taking their double attack that turn once they've entered battle phase. That's just fantastic. Love that. This card is such a good card, and you need to be running it. You don't end up having space for the Drago Energy, but the Drago Energy is not as important as this card. Like, the Drago Energy only really matters against stuff like Amino Hahari and, Gunvels. Those are like the only cards that the Drago Energy clone actually matters against. And they can just Drago Energy themselves out of that situation. Dragon Thunder can just be used preemptively, and you don't have to worry about that Drago Energy, and it doesn't rely on you having a size 3. That is the most important thing. This can still protect you even if you don't have a Raging Spirit on the field, and that is so important to have that extra protection when you need it. And finally we have 4 of the weapons. Sky Splitting Armor Master Ryle. It's a vanilla weapon, but that's good enough. Because you want all that gauge, especially for the control matchups, because you need to be constantly dropping size 3s. So having a free weapon is really good. Though, I wouldn't mind Bushiroad if you gave me, like, a Drago Keeper that costed 1 gauge. Like, just give me Drago Keeper. That would be great. That would be great. Or Aegis. Like, a clone of either of those, maybe even a bit nerfed, I would love to death. Even if it cut into my gauge usage, that would just be so good. But regardless, this does its job well enough. Buddy Sword I have to highly recommend against, because that gauge cost is just too much, and it's going to kill you in those control matchups. It will completely kill you when you're facing Wizards, when you're facing Armor Dragons, when you're facing anything that runs Greybard. That gauge cost and that life cost, as small as it is going to completely destroy you for your opponent. And that Penetrate is not going to matter enough. Just go with 4 Master Ryo. You really don't need more than 4 weapons, because you have so much draw power that it doesn't matter. For my sideboard, I had 2 more Gang for the matchups that's really good against, like, other Ancient World decks that aren't Raging Spirits. Gang the King completely wrecks, because their only answer to it is, once he's got that buff, their only answer to that 5 damage coming at their face, is Glacies. And then you just keep Gang alive to the next turn, and then smack them again. Like, it is so good in that matchup. There are a few others that's pretty good in, but that is the main one that is amazing in. Next is 2 more Thunder Tornado for the matchups where you really need to blow up that stuff, like Stars or Magic World and all that kind of stuff, or Dungeon World. so that you can blow up their Glory Seekers or their set spells. So yeah, really good. Then a 4th Demonica in our side for those matchups that we really need to negate their spells, like the Oops of Magic World decks or the Great Fate set from Star decks. A 4th Glacies. I really wish this was in the main. Honestly, it should have been in the main. 2 Dragon Flame Cascade. You bring this in against like stuff like 72 Pillars, Stars, Death Rulers. Okay, this saved me so much against a Death Ruler player I played, but we'll get into that a bit later. But this card is so good. It's Dragon Thunder, but wipes the whole field for just 2 gauge. It is so good. And then 2 Dreams. I've expressed in the past I do not like Dreams at all, but here's the thing. You need that extra life when you're dealing with burn matchups like Wizards, like Greybard, like Armor Dragons, because they keep blowing up your stuff. So that extra life is kind of worth it in those matchups. I don't like having to say that, but yeah, it is handy enough in those matchups. Mainly because we don't have Everlock. Everlock really helps deal with a Greybard is the main issue. Once we have Everlock, Greybard won't be so difficult to deal with. So you won't be... We'll probably still have this in the side to deal with Wizards, but that's the main thing. Alright, and that is it for the deck profile. Now, let's get right into the tournament report. So, let's get right to it. Okay, so round 1, I faced a kid. He was using Armor Knights, some janky Armor Knight build. It did not last long. I went 2-0, didn't side. Just won that, no problem. So, yeah, that was that. Round 2, I faced Simon Van, who's the Canadian champion from last year. Didn't end up going to Continentals because he's a scrub that didn't get a passport. Simon, fix that. You better have that fixed. I don't want you to qualify at the World's Qualifier in fall and not go again because you don't have a passport. Get that passport, Simon. Okay, so he was using Wizards, which kind of worried me because... While Wizards aren't a bad matchup per se, like it goes about 50-50, it's a bit too close for me. And if it's running things like Iris in the main, then that skews it in the favor of Wizards, which I don't want to deal with that. And post sideboard, they have a lot of things to deal with you, so I don't like that matchup. Game 1, it comes pretty close, but because he doesn't have enough answers, I just keep rushing his face in with Champion Lord and win the game. Game 2, it comes just as close, but what ends up happening is he charges his second Tempest Wing of the game. That would have killed me. That Tempest, I was only at 3 life. I did not have Ricky. If he had dropped that Tempest Wing and killed my Raging Spirit with it, with its effect, I would have died. I would have lost that game, or I probably could have. I might have been able to come back and take it in game 3, but I would have lost game 2 if he had done that. But instead, he charged it because he had Oops in his hand, but I had Demonica in my hand, so when he tried to Oops me, I just Demonica'd it, and then, well, that's that. I took the game next turn and won that matchup. Then, round 3, I faced 72 Pillars, Sean Ho. He ended up coming second. I really liked it every time I faced Sean Ho, but I'll get into that more when I talk about my top 8 match because I faced him again there. But game 1, I only see 1 Raging Spirit all game, maybe 2, and he Belial's me. Belial is one of the most difficult cards for Raging Spirits to deal with, because unlike the rest of the 72 Pillars deck, you can't Thunder it. And when it gets dropped, they're going to kill your Raging Spirit. And if it's not Billy and Knuckle, you need 2 Wrath Triggers to actually make your Raging Spirit last through that. And if they have Abracadabra, there's a bunch of things that they can do in that situation. So Belial is really difficult to deal with, and if your life isn't high enough to deal with that, you need to be really wary of Belial when you're playing Raging Spirits against 72 Pillars. Be careful of that card. But Belial is a really great card, and I love that card to death. I talked about how good that card is a lot in the basics on 72 Pillars. So I was glad to see... I was fine with being beaten by 72 Pillars deck that was running Belial because I love Belial. Round 4, I faced Dungeon Mix. Oh man, this matchup gave me so much satisfaction. There's so much satisfaction when I get to face Dungeon Mix. Okay, so for those who don't know, Dungeon Mix has this little problem with Ancient World called Thunder hits everything. Thunder hits everything that matters in that deck. Kira to get rid of my soul, Thunder hits that. Tetsuya to make plays, Thunder hits that. Brave Drum, Thunder hits that. Thunder hits so many things in that deck, it is ridiculous. So both games, I just grind him out. I just go through the whole game, grinding as much as I can, grinding him on resources, because they're just going to run out of resources. I play Billy and Knuckle constantly, and only straight both games, trying to avoid losing that soul when I was on Billy and Knuckle, because his only real out is to Pillar of Fire me, and he just runs out of cards eventually both games. Whenever he dropped a Brave Drum, I would stop it for one turn, then I would swing into it with Ricky the next turn, and then when he attacked with it next turn, I would Thunder it to make him waste that turn. Game 1, he did heal off of Glory Seeker, but it didn't really matter because I was going to come back, and he was so low on advantage at that point that he just couldn't come back from that. Like, even with that heal, it didn't matter because he was in such a disadvantageous position in that matchup because of Thunder being amazing that he just couldn't deal with that. So he just got wrecked. Like, when he tried to drop Kiro, when he tried to drop Tetsuya, it didn't matter because I would Thunder it at the beginning of the battle phase before their effects could go off. And this was the matchup where I really took advantage of Billy Knuckles' counterattack, that whole play I talked about earlier, where in the middle of a link attack, you Thunder one of their guys, and the other dies due to counterattack. So yeah, that's what I did. That matchup. Round 5, I face Adol Diablos, and I am kind of salty about this one, because Gang the King in Demonica apparently did not exist, and he had that 40% chance, both games, that he would get the Adol Diablos without needing makings, and I would have been able to, well, I did see Demonica at the beginning of the first game, and if he had had the makings, I would have had that game. Gang the King did not show up either game, even after I sided in up to 3, it did not show up, ever. So that kind of blew. I didn't see Billy Knuckle ever, which he said afterwards that he was pretty scared of seeing, but I just never saw it. And he opened Divine Dragon Creation and Dragon Emperor Legend both games. Apparently, I am not allowed to win against Seeker Style decks. That's just the rule of the universe. Even when I should have at least decent matchups. Whatever. And round 6, I faced Death Rulers, which is just, like, it's an instant lose for Death Rulers. It sucks to say this, but it's an instant lose for Death Rulers. They can't deal with Raging Spirits. They can't deal with Thunder. They can't deal with everything being redirected to Raging Spirit. They can't deal with Dragon Flame Cascades in Game 2. Like, Game 2, he almost had me because he death damage, I Demonica, then he death damages again, so my Raging Spirit is gone. Crap. But I have 2 gauge left and Dragon Flame Cascade in my hand. I have 6 life left. He tries to take me out with a bunch of Shadow Divers. I just Dragon Flame Cascade his field. It goes away. I ended up dropping down to 1 in that game because I didn't have the gauge the next turn to drop a Raging Spirit. But I would have lost if I didn't make that play. And unfortunately, I didn't have a Thunder in my hand at that time. So that kind of really sets me back. But I set him back so much with that Cascade that it didn't really end up mattering. And I eventually managed to win it. There was a point where he was almost able to 13 me. But I didn't have enough in the drop. So I still had 2 life left and it wouldn't be enough. And 13 was just going to get counterattacked by Billy Knuckle if you tried to drop it and swing in with a double attack. So that didn't matter. So he just tried chump blocking me with Averia and trying to get another, but he didn't get another. And that was his game. So I ended up seeding at 2nd place, which is kind of funny for me because the number that I was registered at, because apparently no one thought to pre-register, I was registered as number 2. So I seeded at 2nd, which I found pretty funny. Michael seeded at 1st place. The Adol Diablos player seeded at 3rd. Simon seeded at 4th. Who's seated at 5th? Braden seated at 5th, being the massive sack that he is. Sean seated at 7th. Damien seated at 6th. So he was facing the Other Diablos player, which I wasn't sure if he was going to have a good matchup there. And he ended up losing. And at 8th was the Dragon Knight player. So he would end up facing Michael, Simon versus Braden, but you already know about that from his deck, his thing yesterday. And then I'm facing Sean again. And Belial wrecks my face game 1 because not enough. I honestly don't think I drew too well in these games. I end up taking game 2, but game 3 he makes a really smart play after Belialing me again. Okay, the key to this is that every time I lost, Belial was there, just making sure that I have trouble with everything because Belial Knuckle does not exist. It's not a card that exists. It's a figment of your imagination. I might seem a bit salty, but I am perfectly fine with losing to Sean because it's not like last year when I lost to Sean Armstrong, not Sean Ho, because I lost to someone named Sean in top both years. So that's a thing that happened for some reason. But I'm perfectly fine with losing to Sean despite it being a bad matchup because Sean didn't win solely because of me drawing bad. He won because his deck was really well built, which I swear is not biased based on it being really close to my build from what I know. He won because Belial is an amazing card and he used that well. He won because he made a really good play for dodging Demonica with his oops in game 3. He won not just because of me not drawing the best. A lot of why he won is because he played really well. So, yeah. I didn't actually have a Demonica when he avoided my Demonica, so it didn't really matter. But if I had a Demonica, what I could have done was I could have thundered his Asmodai on response to that ability, and then I opened up Demonica that oops. I wouldn't have to worry about a thing that turn. But my life was too low because Belial is OP, and yeah, that happened. I'm honestly pretty disappointed that Sean didn't win because Michael drew 4 Dragobonds plus a Bastard Sword in one of the games, and that's kind of OP. That is OP drawing, and I'm really disappointed that Sean couldn't go to the event. Sure, it means Braden gets to go, which is great for him, but Sean, I feel that Sean really deserved it, so I'm kind of upset that Sean didn't get to go. So yeah, that is my tournament report. I don't really care that much, if I'm perfectly honest. It's just a bite challenge. The bite challenge was really crappy this year anyways. The tournament structure is terrible, especially if you're in Europe or Asia Oceania, that kind of blows. And Worlds is going to be what's really going to matter. And honestly, even if I could go to New York, even if I could go to Continentals, both of those events are on the weekend of another release. This event was already on the weekend of Neo Enforcer. I don't want to do that again. No thank you. That already happened with this event, and I would prefer not to do that with 3 events in a row, especially with New York being as big as it is, and it's not a sure thing to begin with, so yeah. I'm cool with this. I will probably be going with Braden for anyone who follows my channel who is going to Continentals, if you want to see me there, because I am Braden's Baku. So yeah, with that said, there will be 5 more deck profiles and tournament reports coming from the rest of the guys at my locals coming up in the next week. So look forward to that. I'll be seeing you guys later.